Good morning, good afternoon, good evening based on your time zone. So this is part 2 of our LWC interview series. So let's get started. The next question is, how do you pass data from parent to child component in LWC? This is again very basic and very common question in any LWC interviews. In LWC, data is passed from parent to child component using public properties decorated with @API decorator. So let us understand with the help of an example. Suppose you have this parent HTML, right, where we need to pass this name value from parent JavaScript to a property in child component. Remember, this is child JavaScript. So here we have this property employee name and we want to receive the value from the parent component here. So we need to decorate it with @API decorator to make it a public property. Once it is become public property, parent can pass data into it. So how parent can pass data? Remember, whenever you write property on child, it would be on camel case. Whenever you want to pass data from parent component, you need to write that property into kebab case. So you need to give a hyphen whenever you have the uppercase letter here. So the format would be employee hyphen name here, and what data we are passing from parent is this name. So name can be anything based on the parent JavaScript name. Let's say is David, so we are passing David into this employee name here. So this is how we can pass data from parent to child. And remember, you can pass arrays, object and string, anything with the same format from parent to child component. So the key takeaway from here is, like, whenever we want to communicate from parent to child, you need to use the API decorator. So this thing you need to remember, and then you can able to recall this very easily. And whatever LWC interview question we are covering here, you can download complete LWC interview questions by going to this link. This link is also I have added on the description, so you can check it out. Moving on to next question, how do you pass data from child to parent in LWC? So we have seen how to pass data from parent to child using @API decorator, but now it is reverse. Here we are not using @API decorator, but in LWC data is passed from child component to parent component using custom events. Right, so child dispatches an event and the parent listens for and handles it. Right, so again, this is very basic and very commonly asked question in LWC interview. So let's understand it with the help of an example. Suppose you have this child HTML and you have this child JavaScript file. So we want to send data from child to parent, right? So here we have a one lightning button on the child, and how we are on click of that button, we are calling this send data method on child. Send data method is doing what? It is creating a custom event. So here it is the syntax of the custom event that you need to create whenever you need to pass data from child to parent in LWC. So in the custom event, you have to write the name of the event. You can give it any name, and then the details. So details would be containing the data which we want to send it to the parent component. So here we are sending this object to the parent component, but you can send any integer or any single string to the parent component as well. But in this case, we are passing this object which has name property and age property. So we are passing the complete object to the parent component. Once the custom event is created, we need to dispatch that event using this syntax, this dot dispatch event, and that event whatever we have created. So once we have created and dispatched the event, how parent will handle it? Let's see that. So on the parent HTML we have this one, on the parent JavaScript we have this piece of logic. So what is happening whenever you are dispatching anything from the child, you need to write that here while defining the child tag. So the event name you have to, so here you have to add a prefix which is on, right, and then the event name. So if you remember, on the child component we have given the name as save, right? So you have to add on prefix in every every time whenever you are handling it on parent component. So you have to write this on prefix and then save, which is the event name, it could be anything, and how you are handling it with this method on the parent component. What it is doing, it is receiving an event, and whatever data you are sending on the event, it will get stored in this event.detail. So we have sent an object data from child, so that will be getting stored here. And if you want to retrieve any property of that object, we need to again write dot and name. So on this dot name, it will store whatever we are passing from the child component here. So this is how the parent can handle the event, or you can see the parent can receive data from child. So the key takeaway here is whenever you need child to parent communication, you need to use custom events. So in the other case, when we have seen parent to child communication, you have used @API decorator, but here we need to use custom events. So these two things you need to remember so that you can recall things very easily. Moving on to next question, how to call child method from parent in LWC. So again, this can be a tricky question that can be asked in an interview. So we want to call, there is a method on child which we want to call from parent. How we can achieve this thing, right? In LWC, a parent can call a child component's public method. Remember, the method has to be public using the @API decorator and this .template query selector. So let's say we have this parent JavaScript. Right, on the parent JavaScript we have this method, and this we want to call from the parent. So on the child JavaScript we have this method, and what we want is we want to call this method from parent, right? So first, to make this method available for the parent, you need to use the API decorator, which we have also seen here, like we need to use @API decorator. But how parent can call this method? Let's go on to the parent HTML now. On the parent HTML, we have this button, right? Whenever we are clicking that button, we want the method on the child to get called, right? So here we have written call child method on the parent. So let's see parent JavaScript what it has. So on the parent JavaScript, whenever the button is getting clicked, it will run this method. And here what we are doing is we are selecting the child tag. So this .template, this, remember, this is parent.javascript. So how to select the tag? You can select it by using this .template.query selector and c-child. So if you see on the parent side, you have this c-child tag added here on the parent HTML. So once that is selected, so we are storing it on a variable called child, and then on the child we can directly call that method which is on the child. So from the parent JavaScript we are able to call the method on the child, and remember it has to be public, otherwise the parent cannot able to call this method. So this is how, using the API decorator on the child and using the this.template.query selector on the parent, we are able to call method which is there on the child from the parent component. So I hope this is clear. If you stuck at any point, just rewatch it and it will become clear to you. I will try to make a dedicated video on it so that it will become more clear, but from the interview perspective, I hope the points are clear now. The next question is, how do you pass data between unrelated components in LWC? So we have seen from parent to child, child to parent, but what if the components are not related? Again, this is very important, very commonly asked question in interview, how you can communicate it. So data can be passed between unrelated Lightning Web components using Lightning Message Service, LMS. LMS enables communication between components that do not have parent-child relationship. So you can communicate between components even if they are not related to each other using parent-child relationship. You can communicate LWC with any Aura component or Visualforce component using this LMS. So for Lightning messaging service, what you need to do is, first you need to create a message channel. So you have to create this file into message channel folder, and the format would be in XML, right? So here you have to give the master label. This you can give anything. So in this case, since we want to pass the employee message, we are giving the employee message name here is exposed would be true, and any description about this message we can write. Once the message channel is created, you need to create a publisher component. So this is the LWC component which is going to publish that message, which means it is going to send that message, and that message would be received by any unrelated component. So for publishing it has to import from lightning/message service module, right? And we need to write publish message context. We are importing from this module, and then we need to import this employee channel which we have created in step 1. So once that is done, we are publishing this. Let's say send message is called from like click of a button or something from the HTML. So once that is being called, we are publishing that message. So here we have so in this syntax we need to write like this dot message context. Employee channel would be our message channel here which we are importing, and then the details whatever we want to send. So in this case we are sending employee name as John. We are sending this data, and this will be received by the subscriber component. So next we would be having the subscriber component which is going to receive that data. So how they are going to receive that data? Once it is published by the component 1, it will be subscribed by any number of component. This is one of the subscriber, but it can be a Aura component, it can be a Visualforce component, anything it can be. They are able to subscribe to that message. So for doing that, we need to again import subscribe and message context from this module, and the channel where the publisher component send the data, right? And we need to write this on the connected callback. We have seen this on the connected callback question as well, that we need to subscribe it. LMS we can subscribe on the connected callback. So here we have to write this dot message context, employee channel, and the message which is there on the message channel which is published by the publisher component. So what message is published by the publisher component is this employee name. So whatever message we have received, we can store it into this component property which is the employee name. So this is how the publisher component sends the message, and the subscriber component receive that message and use it for as per the business requirement. And remember, these two components were unrelated. They are not like parent to child communication. They does not have any kind of relationship like that, but still they are able to communicate. How this is possible? Using the Lightning messaging service. Okay, so this all is how we can communicate, but there might be people understand the theory very well, but sometimes they are not able to understand what is the use case, why two unrelated component needs to talk to each other. So let's understand with the help of an example here. Let's say you have any e-commerce site, right? You have any e-commerce site, let's say for example Amazon. So on Amazon, let's say there is one LWC component here on the same page, and there is another LWC page here. So this will be the cart, and this would be the products, right? So it has many products, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say whenever you select product 1 and 2 and click on add to cart button, all the details will be displayed here. So since these two component, let's say this is component 1, this is component 2. So how the component 2 will get to know what all product is added into the cart? Whenever the user select, let's say 1 and 2 product and click on add to cart, it will publish a message to the message channel, and that is being subscribed by this component 2, and then this component 2 will display all the items that is selected, what is the total, what is the count of the product selected. All those details would be displayed on the same page, even though these are two unrelated components. So this is one of the example or use case of this LMS feature, and this is why the communication between two unrelated component is fairly common in any business or any project. So I hope you get the point why communication between unrelated component is needed. The next question is, can LMS communicate with Aura? So the answer is yes. One of the LMS main advantage is that it supports communication between LWC, Aura and Visualforce. So any component can publish the message channel, publish to the message channel, and any component can subscribe to that message channel and able to receive the data. So this you need to remember, this can be asked in any interview. Moving on to next question, what are events in LWC? Events are used for communication between components or to respond to user actions like button clicks, typing, or selecting a value. Event notify that something has happened. Events can carry data using the detail property. So we have seen some of the events by now, like custom events that the child can dispatch, but there are other events like on click, on input. Those are the standard events that we have. So Lightning Web Components supports these two kind of events. Moving on to next question, what are different types of events in LWC? So in LWC there are two types of events. Standard DOM events, so these are inbuilt browser events like click, change, input, submit. For example, whenever you write any input box, you write on change. So this is one of the built-in browser event. Like whenever any value gets changed, the inbuilt standard events will get dispatched automatically, and this method will be called on the JavaScript and handles that event. So like on change, on click, on input, on submit, these are some of the standard DOM events that we have. The other type of events that LWC supports is custom events. These are created by developer for component communication. Like in case of child to parent communication, we have seen like child creates the events and dispatch it to the parent, and parent handles that event. So these kind of events are the custom events because they are made by developers. These are not built-in or standard events. For example, we have seen we created a custom event on child and then we dispatches it. So this is one of the example of custom events. Moving on to next question, what is promise function in LWC? This is again, I would say, very important question, and promises are generally mostly used in LWC. In any project you will be writing the promise into that component. So let's see what it is. A promise is a JavaScript object that represent eventual completion, success or failure of any asynchronous operation. Okay, so let's understand with the help of an example what asynchronous operation means and what promise means in general. So imagine you have called an apex method from LWC to fetch 500 account records. So what Salesforce will do, Salesforce needs few seconds to process that request. Like there is whenever you call any apex method from LWC, Salesforce will generally going to take time. So what Salesforce do is, like, instead of freezing the entire page until data comes back, JavaScript continues executing the remaining code. So they are not waiting for data to come immediately. Instead, they continue to run the other code which we have on the component, right? And once the server responds, the promise lets us know whether the operation was successful or not. So whenever you are calling any apex method, it is asynchronous, like data will not come immediately. It runs on its separate thread and the next block of code is running as usual, and when the data comes, it either be a successful, like it does not have any problem, or it may fail, and once server processes the data, it will then display it on the page. So once we see the example, it will become more clear. In LWC, promises are commonly used with apex method calls, fetch API calls, lightning data service operations, any asynchronous JavaScript code. So these all whenever you are calling all these methods, like it will be asynchronous. Data will not come immediately whenever we are calling it. It will take some time and it will run on separate thread. In LWC, there are two methods to handle promises. Like promises can either return a successful operation or it will be a failure operation. So these two are handled by by then and catch in LWC. For example, we are calling an apex method which is get accounts, right? So this would be asynchronous, like JavaScript will run the remaining code. If there is any other code, it will continue to run that code, and once this method returns a promise, it will show like the console or data if you want to show it on the UI. Okay, so promises can either be successful or failure. If the promise is successful, like we are successfully able to get data from the apex method, then this then will get executed and we have the result on the console or any other logic you have written. But let's say there is any error. In that case, promise will return a failure operation, so which is handled by this catch here, and we are catching the error, we will display it on the console or any other logic you may have, right? So for successful response from the promise, this would be handled by then. For failure response, this would be handled by catch. But there is other way to handle the promises in LWC also, and it is recommended as well. Why it is recommended, I'll tell you, but before telling the benefit, let's understand what it is. Let's say there is a button. On click of that button, we want to fetch all the account details. So whenever we are clicking that button, it is calling this load account method, and since we want to make it asynchronous, we have to write this async here, right? So first we have to write the async on the method name, and inside that, whenever we are calling the apex method, which is get accounts, so here we need to write await. Why we need to write await? Because until we get the data, this other piece of code will not run, and once we receive the data, this will get run. But if there is any failure, it will be catched by catch block and it will display on the console. So you might be asking like why the next piece of code is getting blocked. So actually this is not getting blocked. This complete method is async, right? There might be some other logic other place on the code that will continue to run as usual. Only this try method will get stopped until we get the data from the apex method. Once we get the data, this console will run, or any other logic you have will going to run, but the other block of code is not getting blocked, which you have on the JavaScript or HTML file, that will not going to get blocked. Why this async and await is more recommended? It is easier to read, it is easier to maintain, and it is easier to write as well. So that's why in modern LWC applications, people prefer to use async and await rather than using then and catch. So these are two methods, you can use either, but async and await is more recommended here. Moving on to the next question, we have does an imperative apex call returns a promise? The answer, as you already know, it is yes. Imperative apex calls always return a promise, so you need to handle it by using either then and catch or by using async await in order to handle this, right? So this is it about this part 2 of our LWC interview series. If you want to download the resources for this complete LWC question and answer series, you can check this link. This link I have also added in the description. You can check it out, and if you get to know something from this video, please like this video. This will motivate me to create upcoming videos, and please subscribe to my channel so that you are not going to miss any upcoming videos in future. Till then, take care and bye.